Good morning, cats and kittens. Hold on one second there. Let's get this. This could be your fancy opening. Let's get some tunes. You know what time it is. All right. I'll get them internets on and we'll get to it. Hey, guys. All right, let's get this going, get this party started, and go from there. Get the blue light glasses. Let's make it happen. Time to make the donuts. A lot going on today. I think the best thing that I can do is to start basics and then take questions. I do want to just start. I had silver up, so I might as well just start here. I really don't know what's going to get this down. I don't know what's going to stop. It's interesting because when people join the community, like I do these onboarding calls, and I talked to a couple people yesterday. It's always fascinating to me, like who joins. But the one thing that I would say that I always thought was so interesting is I just don't have an argument in talking to people about how it stops. Like what stops Europe or Asia really from dumping the dollar and buying gold and silver? And I don't know that you get anything here that truly does that. I just don't know what's going to happen here. Like, I'm not saying you're not going to have ebbs and flows, but when you have central banks that are doing this, they're it's not like they just go, oh, well, we're done there. They're doing it for a reason. And I don't think that that's going to stop. And I think that's really important to get. So for me, yeah, I think it's very important for us to really take a hard look at that and to understand that it's probably not going to stop. I think it'll ebb and flow, but I don't think any of that's going to change. And a lot of it has to do with just getting out of the dollar and diversifying. If we take a look at the market in and of itself, and what I'll do is just clean this off for a second so that you guys we'll just start here fresh. And just come across, and again, we always just start there as a pinpoint. And if we look down from here, and then we look at how we're trying to flip over this area, I just think that this is really very important. And I think this is super important where we look at something like this and go, all right, well, how is that going to get us to where we need to be? I think it's interesting that you can't break point of control. I think it's really interesting that you're not falling apart this morning. And if you were going to fall apart, it would be FOMC, government shutdown. There's a lot of reasons, tons of earnings, CapEx might get cut. If it's not getting cut now, I don't know when it does. So, that's kind of interesting. So that's really where my, where my head is with that. And when I look at this, you can see those areas over here. Hold on one second. Thanks, John. When you look at these areas, hold on. Okay, that's not what I want. Come on, stop scrolling around. Let's move this over here so I don't ruin my freaking neck for the day. So, and, obviously that's our level and that's where we came to, but you could come a lot lower, and I just don't think you're going to. So I always want to watch that, and I always want to see how that, that plays out. But you could have come in pretty hard today, and you didn't do that. And so I think that's really important. Now, from looking at that on like a 5-minute chart, that level's marked, and then you see where you're at. You're back in the minutia. You're starting to round a little bit here with the lower highs. Do you really have something here that you could hang your hat on? I don't know. Kind of, right? Kind of, maybe a little bit, kind of. So, and I don't even really need to use that point, but you can see where I'm going with this. So you get it a little tighter actually in here. And you're having a tough time here. But if we really look at that from that area, if you break through it, you have something. So, I'd watch that. I'd watch that pretty closely. And, what gets you through? And this is where it gets interesting. Like, I just think the idea that there's only a 2.5% chance of a rate cut is just dumb. I think it's much higher than that. And I expect that it will, it will move higher than that. I really do think that. So if we go take a look at the NQ, come on, work with me. Come on, little guy. We're going to drop it the same spot. All right, we drop it in the same spot. All right, cool. And then if we come to here and we just see how we're acting, and then we go to the 4, we can see that we're not able to get through it. Hourly, going to be very similar, 15 down last night, and then everyone just bought it. And then that was pretty much it after that. You always kind of get a sense of this on the future side of the thing when you're like, okay, well, just show me where the 50% line is on a 15-minute. I mean, it's not really rocket science. If you're not going to break that in 15 minutes, you're probably not going lower. And then you came all the way back to break even, right? And now you're kind of bonking around there. It's definitely interesting. I do find it fascinating that you're not falling apart. I think you might just want to watch this and just make sure they're not setting, retail up for a disaster. And if they're not, super interesting idea. If we go and take a look at this again and just show you the same thing, which I think, let's go out to this. And so we can see it. You kind of see it, right? So I don't think it's as strong for sure, but I think it's there. You can actually argue you broke it from that trend line over. Okay. All right. So you could actually make that argument that broke it, over, retested it. You can make that argument. You're kind of screwing around with it. So I think that there's some argument to be made on that. There definitely is on the S&P. But realistically, we have to get through that point of control. And we're really struggling with that right now. And I don't know that we're just going to, flip through that and then everything's going to be rosy. But I also think it's interesting that when you look at the Qs, you're in roughly the same kind of area and you're just riding this. So I don't know that that changes either. And you start looking at that 626 that we've been yammering on about forever, and we're not really breaking that. We're really not going through that level here. And I think that's really important to get. You have that level right there, and every single time you're trying to get through it, you can't. Your call wall's up there. So it is what it is. And I'm not really sure that there's a whole heck of a lot to say or do about it. I do think that a lot of people are looking at this and saying to themselves, oh, well, this is definitely going to, we're definitely going to break out. And you have all these earnings this week. And I don't know, man. I just don't view it that way. So, I think you really have to see how this plays out. I want to take a bunch of questions today because there's a bunch of names to go over, and we haven't done a long question session in a long time. So let's just do it. NTR, EWC. Yep. So the NTR, I get, and we've been watching these names try to rally. What was the one that just blew up? Was it MOS that blew up? Maybe that's the one I'm thinking of. Yeah, it didn't really blow up. It's not going anywhere. So I think anything like this, where it becomes a national interest or a national thing, for lack of a better term, I don't see how they're not going to rally around all this stuff. So if I was to look at this, Jacob, greetings from Tokyo, greetings from Miami, I would look at this and say, from that peak, this is that value area. I am starting to break out of it. So that's pretty good for me. Like, I want to see that stuff. I want to break out of those areas, the 12, the 25, or 22. I'm sorry. Need more coffee. Like, it's all there. Like, it's actually perfect. The volume, if you look at it, it's actually picking up. So I get it. And I just don't like trading these names, but it's definitely there. And could you see this continue? 100%, man. Yeah. Like, there's a lot going on in that space, like a lot. And everybody's rallying the wagons, Is that what they say? Rallying the wagons? Circling the wagons? I'll get it. I'll get there. I was never a cowboy in a previous life. I'm pretty sure of that. I never had to rally a wagon. So that much I know. So that much I'm sure of. Where else are we going here with this? What else you got for me? EWC. I don't know. I guess we're fighting with Canada again. Let's find the country that we have the best relationship with, and let's pick at them. It's freaking exhausting. So, I think what's so interesting about Canada is the natural resource side of this. And, if I'm the new prime minister, I get what he's doing, but you're never like, in order to be, doesn't matter. I get what they're doing, but I think that it can go a lot higher because of all the mining that's there. There's so much mining there. And I think that you're going to see a tremendous amount of consolidation that happens in mining over the longer term. I'm not so interested in the financials there. I will say that the financials are going to do better because they're not going to be tied to the dollar. Weak dollar boosts their currency. If it boosts their currency, their bonds are worth more, yada, yada, yada. European financials. So I do think there's something to that. Yeah. And the energy side of the trade, I don't really care about as much, but there is something to that too. Pardon my voice, especially when you start talking to China. But I do think that the material side is being grossly overlooked. When I was looking at inflows yesterday, year 4 weeks of just ramping inflows into materials up. And, you go back and look at this, it almost makes you think a little bit of like, man, remember when energy ramped up in the end of 21 and then everyone's buying materials now. So I don't know if it's similar, but it makes me think. Yeah, I think the Rio trade's super interesting. I think Vail is super interesting. I don't know that I want to go out there and pick the winner. One of the things I say pick the winner. One of the things I went over the other day was just pick. But that kind of makes more sense to me because I don't know if it's going to be Rio or Glencore or who it's going to be. I don't know who it's going to be. So instead of me playing that game, just you're looking at this. That's kind of how I say it, John. But, you should do what you're comfortable with. In regards to Vail, yeah, this makes a lot of sense, like a lot. And I forget, I had this whole thing mapped out. I got to go through my notes. But this does make a lot of sense. And I do think that it is something that will continue. What you're seeing there is when you go through the weekly imports out of Vail, into other countries, they're through the roof. Pardon the slurping, but we're going to have to deal with it today. We're going to have to be a team. We're going to have to put up with it. And I think one of the things you have to think about with like Vail I just actually screenshot this and just dropped it in my room so that I remember it, is that I think China understands what's happening more than other countries understand what's happening. And I think it's because they take such a long-term outlook on everything they do. But China's looking at this and saying to themselves, this is not going away. Like, it's just not going to go away. And so we have to get everything we can out of Latin America as fast as we can. And so they're speeding things up there because I think that they saw what just happened to them with Venezuela, where they're losing, they're going to lose billions of dollars. So it's an issue. And I think they're trying to get as much as they can out of there. Metals just the play. It's like pick one. And I don't think that's going to change. Like you might get bonked around a little bit, but I just don't think that's going to change at all. I just don't see it that way. They're going to get whacked around like everything else. Thanks. Those videos never do well, Jay. When I do the like global kind of video, it's funny. The people don't really like those. They want to be more U.S. equity space, but I think you have to understand the moving parts. I think you have to understand the parts of that video so that you understand why materials are going to do what they're going to do. I think when you look at that, it starts making more sense. So it is what it is. NVIDIA, Amazon, RKLB. So for me, I think it's super interesting and super troubling that NVIDIA got opened up to H200 and everybody's like, whatever. Nobody seems to care. And I do think that that's a problem. I feel that that's a problem. And then we saw things like AMD try to get through and get completely rejected. Now, is that a Friday thing because of the OpEx? I don't know, but that should have gotten through and we didn't. So it's definitely an issue. RKLB, I like a lot, but the market has no depth to it, like at all. And you could see that the market just literally just got right out of these names. I think if you're looking like super long-term at this stuff, you're crazy not to be looking at stuff like RKLB. But short-term, this thing can just get absolutely whacked and shellacked. And retail could just move on, but I think long-term it makes a lot of sense. Greetings from North Carolina. Yeah, they sent me photos yesterday. They're out in the snow, playing in the snow. USAR. So it seems to me that you get these deals and then the deals just smoke you. I don't know. I think you could have bought this that night at like 28, 29 on Friday. And, hopefully you got out of it if you could have. It's like these deals don't really hold these names very long. And, that's a hell of a move and all the way back down. And, here you go. So maybe it's tradable, but I don't like names that do that kind of stuff, that fade like that. It's that they're hard to trade. They're very, very hard for me to trade or get involved. Well, I think when you look at both of those, you have to think about it like EUAD, right? To me, I don't know how it doesn't go higher over time. Like, it just makes no sense. We start screwing around with this thing at $30, but Europe's going to have to defend Europe and they're going to have to increase their budget. That's not going to change anytime soon. Like, it's just not going to change. So that's not going away. Poland, to me, I actually think is like I actually think in U.S. for market. Oh, hold on 1 second. Okay. All right. Hold on. If we take a look at like EPOL, like that's my dark horse for, well, not really dark horse, but that's the one I actually think leaves the EU. I think they've had enough. I think that's why they're the number one buyer of gold out there right now. So personally, and I think it's going to take time, but I think that's where this is heading. And it is what it is. And, I think it makes a lot of sense. I think Poland makes a lot of sense. And I think Italy makes a lot of sense. Like, both of those are really starting to, you can see it in the way that they're talking, where they're like, okay, it's national interests, and then we come together as EU. It's national interests, then we come together as EU, versus like how Germany and France are looking at it, and Spain, or where they're like, no, it's the EU, and then we look at our citizens. Or even how like the UK guy said it the other day. He's like, oh no, we look at, working with the EU, and then we look at our citizens. Like, it's kind of weird that people are trying to not look at their national interest first. So I think that Italy and Poland make the most sense. Italy is aggressively recruiting very high net worth individuals to come to their country and giving them very long, very strong taxable reasons why to do it. Like, really cheap. Like, there's nothing, no one's got anything comparative to it, to the point where like members of the EU are trying to stop it. Yeah, I mean, we completely escaped it down here. I think we had some clouds, but we usually don't escape it this bad. Last week it was like 45, 50 degrees a couple of days here. And I know you guys want to throw like rocks at me when I say that, but down here I'm in like flannels and a mittens. I don't know those names well enough. I got guys in the room that know that stuff cold. I know this one cold. This is, out of those three, I'll just tell you, this is the one that I own a lot of. And we've owned it for a while now. So since it was double digits down in here. And I just pick at it. That's the one I own the most of. I don't know enough to talk intelligently about GSAT, so I'm not going to. And I don't know enough to talk about VSAT. I know there's guys in the room that know this stuff cold. I'm not one of them. So I'm not going to do it. SATs to me is a no-brainer, but you should do what you're comfortable with. And I obviously can't give financial advice. So Vail, I like, we covered. HL, I get it. I just think there's better names. And maybe not from a fundamental standpoint, but from a technical standpoint, I think there's better names that are just starting to break out versus names that are this far off their base. So I always want to make sure that I don't get killed. Like, everything I do is to try to figure out how to not lose money and then make money, right? In that order. So I don't know, man, you're pretty high up there on that one, aren't you? The Vail makes a lot of sense. What's up, Tariq? Good morning. Yeah, I'm on that. I think I just set it up. Well, I've got see, everyone that gets a mug gets a handwritten note. So it takes time. Like, I literally handwrite notes to everyone that gets a mug. So it takes time. And everyone's like, I don't care about your note. Just give me the damn mug, Boomer. But whatever. There's a way to do things. Make good choices. What's up, Jay? Yeah, silver just looks to me on a tail. Yeah, I keep seeing this name and I keep hearing people talk about it, Jay. Everyone keeps hitting me with this one. I don't know anything about it, man. American Resources. Every time I see the word resources, what am I looking at? Coal. Beautiful coal, as he likes to say. Beautiful, beautiful coal. I don't know. I don't know what they do. I can tell you in 2 seconds, but I don't know the story. Them internets will tell me. What's going on, Grace? I'll come back to it. I don't think you're forcing yourself to chase them. What I tend to do in this kind of environment is short-term trades, make what I can, get out of the way, put them back on, get out of the way, and wash, rinse, repeat over and over and over again. That's what I tend to do with them. That tends to work really well for me. I'm just a little concerned about everything else going into it, because if we lose certain names here, it becomes a real issue. Like if we start really losing, if you lose the memory and storage names this week, it's going to be an absolute crapshoot. Hold on one second. I'll do this, do more. Come on, hit the button. Don't be afraid. What was I looking up? I was looking up something. Raw materials infrastructure has pivoted from traditional coal mine supply to critical minerals for the electrification economy. Reshoring supply chain rare earth minerals. Oh, so they pivoted. That's why you're so interested in it. I don't know enough, man. They're probably better off making coal. Beautiful, beautiful coal. But I don't know how they pivoted or what they're doing. So I'll watch it and go from there. See what they do. See how that plays out. I mean, but when you say recover, like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean recover? Like it's at 112, you're $8 off the high. What do you mean? When you say recover, like, did they have to be at the high all the time? That sounds like you sound like somebody that bought options, Troy. It sounds like someone bought out of the money options. The call wall, I know the call wall on RKLB is really strong. I remember looking at that sucker. You got like Gandalf standing up there telling you shall not pass. So I don't know that you're getting through that anytime soon. I think the real value unlocks with SpaceX, but ASTS, I mean, you're one bluebird away from either having a great day or, not having a great day with that thing. But I think mid-February, they have that bluebird, or end of February, that other thing's going to go up in space, and that's going to be it. So I don't know. Go from there. But I don't know. I don't really see them doing anything at all of consequence. Like, they seem fine to me. Like I don't know. I don't really view them as broken. What's up, Mon? That's interesting. I don't know anything about it. I really don't. It's definitely building, but I don't know anything about it. We got a bunch of stuff here, right? Just see something. So I would just watch what happens when it gets up to like 9.5. It's interesting though. Yeah, I mean, I got a bunch of this stuff on. I don't see why it's going to stop. I mean, we're going to start swimming in world peace. Troy, like, I don't see any reason for it to stop. Good morning. Good morning. I think they could. I think they could continue to rally. Yeah, Troy. RMBS, I always had a hard time trading because it's so wild like that. It's just so wild of a trade. It's exhausting. So I tend to avoid it just because I don't like the volatility. METC, like, this makes a lot of sense to me. And I mean, that whole space makes a lot of sense to me. And stuff like this, it certainly makes sense because, anything that's like a rare earth coming out of the earth right now, they're going to want. And it's like, what do you have that you can trade us for what we need? And so you're getting this run on materials. So I do think there's something to that. Is that the one that you want to watch? Is that it? Is that the one? Maybe it is. Seems to be getting them a lot of play here. And, I'm not so sure that's going to stop. It's crazy how this stuff goes, though. And then all of a sudden, it's just like do, and then you're up and you're off to the races. So, and I don't really see any reason to do anything about it. I like that trade out of those two. Do I post on X? Sometimes. I don't know. I'm kind of over it, to be honest with you. Every time I go on there, it's just like, it's so like every time I'm on there, even though I don't have any of that stuff, it's just like there's so much political noise. It's like, everyone's an expert. I don't have this GNC. I get sick of it. I guess I could find a way around that, but I should probably post more on there. I used to write a lot more too for Substack. I'm going to start doing that again. MOS is Canadian, is it? Ah. Greetings from Nashville. Nashville is beautiful. Yep, circle the wagons. Morning. Well, yeah, but why would they? They were like, we're right next to them. But I don't know. I know a lot of people from Canada that were very happy. There's a lot of people. I think somewhere between 11 to 15% of the community is actually Canadian. It's much bigger than people think. And it's super interesting to me because a lot of people, they won't say it, but they couldn't wait for Trudeau to be out. That they just couldn't wait. So, but they don't really have to spend a lot on the military. So SQM, super interesting. Yeah, I agree with that. I'm surprised that that's not. Did they change the symbol? No, SQM. It's SQM, or is it SQMS? I think that's the other one. Yeah, this makes a lot of sense, actually, like a lot. And I don't think people got. Well, it looks like they are getting this one too. But stuff like this that are in foreign countries. Yeah, like Chile and anything Latin America, they're just going to boom, and they're going to just try to get everything they possibly can out of the ground there. I'm not really looking for Canadian drone companies, but they are. I think that you have to think about it from a standpoint of like who's going to from a military standpoint. Maybe that catches on. They're going to buy US. Everyone's so corrupt, man. Yeah, I think it makes sense. They have the capital. They're buying a U.S. They're buying the only U.S.-based, U.S.-operated foundry out there. If you wanted to know that you had supply to make your chips as you get bigger throughout the years, and you're using your capital to do that, I think it makes a tremendous amount of sense. So I get it. I think it's a really smart idea. People are going to probably feel differently about that, but I think that it does make a lot of sense for them to do that. Yeah. I don't put any thoughts into it at all, like zero. I've never been there. I don't sell them. Just reach out to me. I'll get one to you. Eventually. Who breaks a mug? Communists. That's who. Just go through and all this. What else you guys got for me? It's definitely gonna be a trader's market, dude. I don't think there's any doubt about it. Like you better know your name's cold because I think the number is like 63%. Where are we? Time-wise. I think it's like 63% is being I think that's what it is. 63% of stocks are outperforming the S&P. So it's a buyer's market for sure. Definitely. Which company does it the best? I don't know. I don't know that anyone does it the best. I think Meta's always I think Meta's always a dumpster fire. You know, I think that I think Zuckerberg's kind of like in a walled garden where everyone just tells him that what he's saying is great because nobody wants to get fired. I think that's why Sandberg actually left, but what do I know? I think the other is I think the CFO of Microsoft does an awful job. I feel bad for her because it's like she's always brought on last, and then she just usually just smokes the stock. But I don't know. Is Carney worse? Is he? Yeah, people didn't really like him like at all. Like Trudeau, like at all. NBO, I don't really have any interest in. Sats, I think, is fine. Mugs, if you're in the community, eventually it'll happen. Yeah, PLTR is fun to watch. He's fun. He's entertaining, that's for sure. Zuckerberg? Yeah, he's always trying to make you like a giraffe or here, wear these glasses and you'll never get a girlfriend, all that stuff. He's a nightmare. And his core thing has been making good acquisitions and stealing other people's ideas. Like he's made a killing doing that. Like anytime he tries to come up with something original, it's not working. So stick with what works, man. I don't know. It should have held. I got to jump, guys. Trade to win. Make good choices.